What's going on, guys? I appreciate you tuning in to today's episode. It's just a few days out from Christmas as I record this, and I've got a little bit of time on my hands, so I thought I'd take the chance to wish you a Merry Christmas and also to thank you for your support during 2023. We'll get to that at the end because I'm not going to make a video without showing you guys some toys, and I've been meaning to share with you my most recent WWF Hasbro action figure pickup, so that's what we're doing today. I'll share with you the most recent Hasbros I've added to my collection, and it'll also give me an opportunity to wish you a Merry Christmas and to say thank you to you guys, and we'll get to that at the end because, like I've mentioned previously, the WWF Hasbro action figure line is one of the most memorable toy lines of my childhood, possibly the most memorable because it was the last toy line that I properly played with as a kid, taking me through to 1994 or maybe even early 1995. So yeah, my memories of playing with the Hasbro wrestling figures are far more vivid than playing with the earlier action figure lines of my childhood, like the Ninja Turtles or the Crash Dummies. So yeah, a special action figure line, super nostalgic to me, and I love collecting it nowadays. But although I only had maybe 10 or 15 figures tops as a kid, it's a deep toy line, and I've got somewhere between 60 to 70 figures in my collection now of the full 100 figure run. So it's slow progress at this point in time, but I'm chipping away, and I've got two figures to share with you today, both from Series 3 released in 1992, and the first of which is the Birdman, Coco Beware. Now, Hasbro reused a lot of the parts and a lot of the body styles in this toy line, and one of the body styles that's reoccurring throughout the line that I hate, and I've spoken about it at length on the channel before, is this body type here with the fused legs and the spring-loaded torso with the lump on the back there for your index finger. I really don't like it. I wasn't into it as a kid because I never actually used the spring mechanism. I just kind of used my imagination to send these guys flying all over the place. And from a display perspective, I just think it's all wrong having these legs, these little tiny legs fused together here. So I'm not into the body type, but with that said, I actually think this is kind of a decent figure. I think that the colors and the sculpt of the upper body and head, as well as the awesome accessory, which we'll speak about, I think that kind of redeems it. So I think it's a good figure overall, and it also helps the fact that Coco Beware was the Birdman, he was a high flyer, so at least it makes sense when you have a high flyer or an aerial specialist have, this kind of spring-loaded feature. And that was really Coco Beware. I remember him having that sort of style both as a singles competitor and also as a tag team wrestler when he partnered with Owen Hart to form High Energy. So at least it kind of makes sense in that regard. But yeah, I think the body sculpt is great. I think the head sculpt is on point with the awesome signature sunglasses. And yeah, like I mentioned, this accessory is fantastic. We've got Frankie the Macaw here, an absolute signature of the Birdman gimmick. And this was an era in the WWF when the animal sidekicks were all the rage. You had Matilda the Bulldog joining the British Bulldogs. Obviously you had Jake the Snake Roberts with Damien. And yeah, I was always up for an animal sidekick as a young wrestling fan. And Frankie the Macaw was definitely one of the more iconic ones of that era. And when you've got Frankie perched on Coco's forearm here, and you've got all the signature sunnies and tights, this is just instantly recognizable as the Birdman Coco Beware. And that's what the Hasbro action figure line was all about. They were colorful, they were cartoony, but they were instantly recognizable of the character they depicted. So yeah, a figure that I'm really happy to have in the collection. And next up, we've got one of the more iconic personalities of the WWF of my childhood, Curt Hennig, aka Mr. Perfect. And this is the first of two Mr. Perfect figures that we'd get through the WWF Hasbro action figure line. We got a blue and yellow repaint of this same figure in a later wave. But although this is the more common Mr. Perfect figure, the blue one is a little bit harder to track down and tends to go for a little bit more money. This version, for whatever reason, had been eluding me, so I'm really happy to have a nice clean example in the collection. And I think this is a great figure. We've got a really good body style. We've got all the elements of Mr. Perfect's signature ring attire captured nicely. And in the context of the cartoony Hasbro action figure line, we've got a great head sculpt as well. So all around a great figure. The action feature is just a simple spring-loaded arm here. Now, this was actually marketed on the card back as the Perfect Plex, Mr. Perfect's signature suplex finishing move. So I think the way that's supposed to work is you pop another figure's head under Mr. Perfect's arm there, and instead of using this as like a punch, you hold this and use it to spin Mr. Perfect and his opponent round. So I think that's how that's supposed to work. I'm not too sure, but in any case, it's always nice to have these 30-plus-year-old figures with working play features, so that's always good. But yeah, not a heck of a lot of super detailed features on this guy, but just a really good representation of Mr. Perfect, of the Mr. Perfect character. And like I said, the Mr. Perfect character was one of the most iconic, one of the most memorable characters of the era of my childhood. And that was all the way from the early vignettes that introduced the character, that showed Mr. Perfect carrying out a whole bunch of different sporting activities perfectly, whether it was bowling a 300 game, or throbbing a football, running the length of the field and catching his own pass, just building him up as this perfect athlete that could do anything. And much like the Mr. Perfect gimmick, Curt Hennig pretty much could do everything. I mean, he was awesome. He had the in-ring talent, he had the microphone skills, he had the charisma to really mix it with anyone on the WWF roster at that time, whether it was in the ring or whether it was outside of the ring, in his roles as, you know, the executive consultant of Ric Flair, or whether it was in commentary. Mr. Perfect was awesome. He had a couple of strong runs as the Intercontinental Champion, I remember, and he really elevated the Intercontinental belt. I certainly didn't see it as like a second tier belt. I mean, there was a little bit of differentiation there between the world title and the Intercontinental title, but they were both very prestigious, you know, on a similar sort of level. And I think a lot of that had to do with Mr. Perfect at the time. But even still, I would have loved to have seen Mr. Perfect get a run with the world title. I think he had the arrogant heel character to play opposite the fan favorites in, you know, Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior, but he also had that in-ring credibility where you thought he could be a threat to those guys. So I personally would have loved to have seen Mr. Perfect have a world title run. Maybe I wouldn't have liked to see it as a kid because, you know, I kind of cheered on the fan favorites, but to look back on it now, I think Mr. Perfect, the Mr. Perfect character and the man behind it in Curt Hennig, rest in peace, he sadly passed away when he was in his 40s, but I think he deserved it, and I think it would have been pretty special to look back on now. But anyways, I'm rambling. A really good figure, two fantastic figures that I'm really happy to have in the collection. So those are the latest WWF Hasbro figures. I definitely want to try and chip away at more and get further to completion in that line in the new year. So that's the goal. But anyway, guys, with that said, I want to take the opportunity to wish you guys a very Merry Christmas. If you're celebrating it, I hope you have a fantastic one. But either way, I hope you guys, you know, all enjoy the holidays and manage to spend the holidays doing whatever it is that you love to do. I hope you guys enjoyed. I also want to take the opportunity to thank each and every one of you for your support during 2023. You know, it's been a big year for the channel. Shortly into 2023, we cracked 1,000 subs, which is amazing. And as we get towards the end of the year, at the time I record this, I'm only about 10 subs away from 2K, which is pretty mind-blowing. I certainly wasn't expecting to get close to that this year, but I really do appreciate it. It means a heap to me. Maybe by the time this video comes out, I will have got to 2,000, but I'm not taking anything for granted. I'm just grateful. So thank you very much. Whether you joined the channel this year or whether you've been with me for years, I really do appreciate it. Appreciate everyone that watches and supports me. You guys are awesome. You're dead set legends. So yeah, just want to say thank you for that. But guys, that will do it. Hope you have a super Merry Christmas. Appreciate you watching today's video. If you made it this far, you're a dead set champion. I hope to hear from you in the comments. As always, you're more than welcome to touch base with us on Instagram at Crusher Collects. I'll see you back soon for the next one, and until then, cheers.